Welcome back. I've got another fantastic interview for all of you today. A friend of ours, part of our EXP family, Mr. Dan Lesniak. And Dan is going to tell us about everything that he has done in the last 18 months to make him one of the most successful influencers in all of EXP. But before he does, I want him to talk a lot about his real estate career. He had a really fast start and was successful right away. His military career, the fact that him and his wife's team sold $732 million of real estate in 1 year, lots of good things. So get ready to take pages of great notes. Dan, welcome to today's interview.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Super excited to get to spend some time with you and get in front of your audience. Like you said, I had a fast start in real estate. I started in 2011 as a part-time agent. At the time, I was working a defense contracting job, which is kind of like the next extension of what you do if you are in the military and get out, right? My last tour duty in the military in the Navy was at the Pentagon. Prior to that, I was on submarines, so I had interesting background there. And I got out, got the typical defense contractor job. Actually, got my MBA as well. I did the evening school, part-time school at Georgetown, so I got most of that paid, luckily, by the Navy and my employer, and didn't get the big like strategy consulting job that I wanted coming out of that. It was not really a good time in the economy for those types of jobs, so not a lot were hiring. So I was kind of in this defense contractor job, which not bad, paid well, right around six figures, but not much upside or excitement for me personally. So I got my real estate license, started doing it part-time. After a few months, my pipeline was bigger than what I was going to make in my full-time job, so I quit. And a year later, after making that transition, I sold a little over 22 million in my first year as a full-time agent.
So you went to the Naval Academy, which you didn't mention, so I'll mention it for you. You had you were an officer in the Navy on nuclear submarines, which you sort of go over, which are the badass points of your bio, if you ask me, but that's okay. And then your first year in real estate, which you also didn't mention, your first full year in real estate, you sold $20 million to the real estate. Did I hit the high points pretty much?
You did. You left out the most important part though, is like I convinced Keri Shull to marry me. So
That's true.
I think that's a very good salesman.
Well, okay, which goes to my question, because you told me a story once, which I thought was really interesting, that I've been looking forward to asking you on our podcast. You
Mm.
were meeting with someone at the interviewing for a job in consultancy, and they suggested that you not pursue it because they thought you would make a rotten salesperson, in essence. I'm getting the details wrong, but can you tell that
Yeah,
story?
no, that was the essence. They said, oh, when you do these management consulting, strategy consulting jobs, they give you these case studies and problems to solve, and they thought I did great on that, but I didn't like convince them of why my solution would work. And so they thought I had the technical and operational skills, but not the sales skills. And they said, go get some different kind of experience, and come back later once you've had that experience. That would maybe help you with sales. So I had bought my first home 2003, like really early in my career through the VA loan, and so I had experience buying and selling homes. And when I was happened to be buying a second home at that time, that was going to be investment property, and I decided I'll get my license, and that'll be my like new sales experience part-time thing. And that kind of took over, and I never went back and reapplied to the dream job. So
Yeah, that's funny. So my mind's going around a bunch of places. So your first year when you sold $20 million, where did those leads come from? Tell an agent, obviously, a lot of agents want to have that level of success. We have a ton of folks. So do you guys, you and Keri have a lot of folks that are in your group that are ex-military. It seems like we attract a lot of military types. I think they like our drilled down approach to the real estate business, and they love you because you're the fact that you were, well, you won't ever tell me what you actually did on the sub. I've tried to get it out of him many times, listeners, but he claims he's still under, what was it called? Security. Why can't you tell me? What is it called?
yeah, I'd have to, if I could tell you, but I have to kill you kind of thing.
Oh, okay, there you go. And I don't want to die, so I can only imagine. But the point of it is that your background with regards to the military is attracting a lot of folks that are also in the military. Your drilled down approach, your nonsensical approach to life in general, but you generated $20 million of sales your first year in the real estate business. That had to cause you to become far less, I would think, you had to train yourself, force yourself to be far less analytically minded to accomplish that goal. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so at the time I was living in a condo building. It was about 5 years old, the building, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to farm the heck out of this building. There were almost 200 units there, and I think if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, how can I easily replicate this? Go find a new community that's 3 years old, maybe 2 years old even, and start farming it, making relationships there. Because typically the builder and the builder staff sell it and then they move on and they don't maintain the relationship. So in most of Arlington, there were already really well established agents, but not in that building. So I just really got to know everyone in there. I had a, you know, I got the email list for the buildings. I happen to live there, so I had that. So that was one thing that helped. I made good relationships with the manager, the assistant manager, the doorman, and they would tell me like so and so's thinking about moving, right? I would just have good relationships with them. I'd always make sure I was when I was talking to them in the lobby that I had a folder that had the real estate logo on the outside, even if there was nothing in it. And which I kind of learned that trick in the Navy too.
How's that? Explain.
Yeah, like if the boat was in yards, the shipyards, then you wanted to leave a little earlier than you were supposed to, it was a good idea to have a folder with you because it looked like you were taking it to one of the like refit offices or somewhere that they needed paperwork for the work being done. So it was always good if you were leaving early to have a folder in your hand.
Words to live by.
Yep. So just being around and getting to know kind of the gatekeepers really helped me get in front of a lot of people. And then at that time, it was a really low inventory market. And a lot of the people that bought a 1-bedroom condo wanted a 2-bedroom now, or if they were in a 2-bedroom condo, they wanted a townhouse. Well, the adjacent areas, which would be good move up locations for them, like adjacent condos, townhouses, had very little inventory. So I would go door knock those, leave notes behind, and simple message like, hey, I've got a couple looking for a townhouse just like yours. They've got a lot of flexibility. There's low inventory. You might be surprised what you could get for it, and we could do it all off market. And so I would basically solve problems for the people in the building, and that would get me I'd solve their problem of they can't find what they want, and then I would get them to buy something nearby, and then I'd get the sale of their existing place. And I ended up getting about 50, I think it was like 52% market share of every transaction in that building that year. And then all but one of the rest of my deals were all like within walking distance of that building. So I did about 10 million of sales in one building, and then another like 11 million in sales that I could walk to from there. And then I had like one friend that I helped in a town that I had to drive to. So
That's incredible. Well, so the question I wrote down, Dan, they can't really tell by watching you now, but you're definitely an introvert. You're definitely somebody who's more analytical. You're not going to be an officer on a freaking nuclear sub if you're not somebody who's really comfortable with, high level thinking. That's one of the things, frankly, I really like about you is that, I know you're really, really freaking smart. And if anything gets by me when you and I are talking to somebody, when we're sponsoring somebody DXP, I know for sure you're going to know the detail on that. We make a good team as far as that goes. But so from a sales perspective, challenges that you have as being somebody who is naturally more introverted and somebody who's generally speaking very analytical, being a salesperson. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that is something that a lot of folks that are analytically minded use as almost an excuse not to be successful.
yeah, I think you have to really train yourself to not let the need to understand every detail get in the way.
How do you do that? As an analytical person, how do you do that? How do you not allow yourself to go down mental rabbit holes?
Mm, that's a
He's
really good
analyzing.
question. You stumped me.
He's
I'm analyzing
analyzing.
it now. No, I think you just have to train yourself that if you don't know an answer, or you hear a response that you've never heard before, that's okay. You can always like tell them you're going to get back to them, right? Or that's a great question. Um, there's a couple different options. I need some more data before I can, give a recommendation. So I think you just have to really train yourself to get comfortable that you're not going to understand everything all the time. And
Train yourself not, it's what we talked, Julie and I talked about this in the podcast the other day. It's script yourself basically. If someone asks you a question as an analytical person, you almost feel this moral imperative to answer every single freaking question with ridiculous detail. That's how analytical people think. And they think everyone else naturally is going to want to have that level of detail. But if someone asks you something that you don't know the answer to, that's pretty much an analytical person's worst case scenario. And so as a result of that, they have a tendency never to even really start. They spend all their time getting ready to get started, learning more classes, more education, more blah, 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 because they're so petrified by the idea that they're going to get caught flat-footed and not know how to answer a question. So you just got to script your way out of that, listeners. And Dan just tiptoed his way around what to say. It's basically Mr. Seller, Mr. Buyer, Bob, whoever. I really appreciate that question. That's a great question. Wow, I haven't had that question before. That's really smart. Give them compliment for their question and then say, let me do some research on that and get back with you so I make sure I give you the best answer. And then get back to what you were talking about. Don't allow yourself to walk on any of the landmines, because the thing that you've got to understand is most people will say things and ask questions even that they're not even thinking about. And a millisecond later, they're not even going to remember they asked the question. But if all of a sudden someone says something, so Dan, do you know anything about the buried power lines behind the properties? An untrained mind, an untrained analytical mind is going to immediately start thinking power lines and blah, 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 blah. Where can I get the maps? Do I have to go to this, whatever it's going to be. Whereas the script that I just gave you guys will make it so you can, worry about that later if they're even still interested in it, which they probably won't be at all anyway. So that's kind of it. What are you thinking? I sense a thought.
yeah, no, I think another great add-on to that is if depending on where you are in the conversation, like if you're closer to the end, you could be like, okay, Mr. Buyer, I understand you have this concern about the power line. I want to make sure I get you the best answer on it. And that, that's not something we have at our fingertips. So I'll have to get back to you on that. But provided my answer on that is satisfactory based on what I find out, is there any other thing that would hold you back from making an offer, right? So I think it's, you can use it
So
to
let
uncover other objections.
well, let's talk about that too. So you didn't learn how to close like you just did in the military. I assume there was no closing skills needed. You didn't learn how to so you're again an analytical person is not going to want, they're conflict avoiders by nature. And you just heard him use a script that he's probably used a billion times when he sold a billion houses to move past it, not just resolve resolve their unanswered question, but then move to the realistic expectation, but that'll be their last objection. Um, you know, there's different variations of that, but the technique hopefully is benefiting a lot of you. So that's really good. I appreciate that. So let me get back. So closing when you were asking for contracts to be signed, closing when you asked a buyer to buy something, closing when you're sponsoring agents at EXP, closing when you asked Keri Shull to marry you. Talk about that. Talk about closing when you talked Keri Shull into making 4 little kids under 8 years old with you. Talk about closing. How does that, like, did you have issues with moving past the fear of rejection and the sense of wanting to avoid conflict? And if you did, how'd you move past that?
Yeah, I think the only way to learn really is to put yourself in the situation where you're having to do it. And I definitely did not get my first couple listings and appointment, So I spent time like learning by losing, uh, for sure. So I think no matter what you're trying to do, whether it's close a buyer to work with you and get an agreement signed up front, close the seller to get a listing agent, recruit an agent, you have to realize that you're going to get told no a lot, and it's just part of the process. I think I've been studying Jeb Blunt a lot the last
Great.
year, and he talks about getting to yeses, getting to nos, and getting to maybes quickly, like within a few minutes. And maybe you'll be able to bend some of the maybes to yeses and get your yes number down, right? Because everyone has a yes number, like the number of times you'll have to ask before they say yes. You can over time get better and lower that number, but it's still going to be a number, right? So you're still going to get told no by a certain amount of sellers, buyers, and agents, or people, no matter what you're trying to sell. So I think you have to realize that rejection is just part of the process, and the more times you put yourself in that situation and the more times you get the reps, the better you'll get. Because you can study all the scripts in the world or get all the real estate coaching, but if you never go out and practice, you're gonna be flat-footed and not be able to implement when you need to. So losing out on a couple deals is like the best form of education you can get.
100%. We talked about that the other day on the podcast as well. I agree with everything you're saying. So let's talk about things that are practical and tactical. And then with your permission, I'd like to pivot and talk a lot about EXP, because that's where you and I actually met. So lead follow-up. Well, let me draw this connection so everyone understands. So Dan sold real estate, Keri Shull sold real estate. They got together, they got married, formed a beautiful family. And Keri's team in 2021, Dan, am I saying this right?
Yep.
Sold $732 million and 1,300 homes, I think.
I think it was right around 1,200.
And this is so those of you who are familiar, well, all of you are going to be probably familiar with Keri, because she's one of the biggest rock stars in real estate, and her interview is here as well. But she, unlike virtually all the other agents selling at that level, is not, I'm just going to say it, a Zillow Flex agent. A lot of the top producing agents in the country right now, top producing by sales volume and by dollar amount, they're buying their leads from Zillow. They're paying 40% referral fees. Keri and I talked a lot about that and why she didn't make that decision. And it's so fascinating. I mean, instantly, I really respected Keri when she told me how it was strictly a numbers decision, even though she knew that she was losing an opportunity at what would have been perceived as easy leads. She did the math, and the math didn't make sense. So can you talk a little bit about that, Dan?
Yeah, we did use the Zillow paid program for quite some time, and over time they tried to push everyone into the Flex. And in the Flex program, you don't pay for it. They supposedly nurture it for you, and then they take a 40% referral fee. So before that lead comes into the team, 40% is gone now. And then, then you have to split it with the broker, the team leader, and the agent doing the deal. And to my knowledge, Zillow Flex is like, I don't think Zillow does it for solo agents. So I always think there's a split between the broker, team lead, and an agent. And
Dan, can you do the math? I mean, let's actually break this down.
yeah, so
let's use 10,000. Let's use $10,000 and do it backwards.
So there's a team in this area. I won't say like which team or company. It's an uncapped broker that says they're a technology company, not a brokerage. But so that lead comes in, and if it's a $10,000 commission, Zillow Flex gets 4,000, right? So 6,000 comes into the brokerage. Well, that brokerage takes for that team, they take 15% on every deal. So now out of that 6,000 that came in, they're going to take $900, right? So now before the team gets paid, that 6,000 is reduced to 5,100. Most teams have a 50-50 split. So the agent is going to get $2,550 on that deal. So they're working for like 25% of the commission.
Right. And so the team leader, but that's not even including the cost that the team leader has
right. I was talking about the buyer agent cost. The buyer agent will 2,500. the team leader will get 2,500, but yeah, they've got all sorts of other hard costs as well. So it's not a good deal for anyone really, except for Zillow maybe.
Well, so in that we're basing on a $10,000 commission, and I mean maybe if the commissions are less, I imagine you could do you and I could figure it out probably pretty quick. But there's a dollar amount, or there's an average commission amount where I'm sure you're actually you're losing money on every buyer side transaction if you have a fee structure that's high. That's like that. I mean, I don't see how you'd even make any money. The profits
Yeah, and
all.
I talked to this agent too. This one is a buyer agent, and um, he's so used to the leads coming in, it's very hard for him to like get off that. Um, but to close 2 deals a month, he's getting like 25 to 30 Zillow leads. So that's a lot of work. And like how much did Zillow really curate that with their ISA team or whatever they do if you have to give someone 15 leads to close one deal? It doesn't, it's not much better than if they just sold you the lead like they used to.
Or
So
just do open houses and get your own damn leads, or become a listing agent and have to beat the buyers off with a stick. I mean, but the answer to this is, as well as I do, Dan. The reality of it is so many agents have come into the industry and have been told, buy leads, buy leads, buy leads. Like, well, of course you're going to buy leads. None of them have actually learned how to be proactive lead generators, which leads me to my next question I wrote down. Well, so as far as lead follow-up, right? So when you and Keri work a lot with individual agents, but you guys also work with big real estate brokers and big teams. And right now, you guys are talking to some massive brokerages, huge 1,000+ agent brokerages. So as far as lead generation, just focusing on a team or a mid-level agent, what would be the suggested lead generation sources that you'd coach them to use?
yeah, well, open houses are really great. Like you said, I think everyone should focus on their SOI, center of influence. I think if you can geo target farm an area of like 2 to 500 homes and dominate that area, right? And so how do you do that? Well, door knock, um, cold call them, get emails, build up an email list, email them, uh, direct mail, like that stuff all works. And it's a lot cheaper than some of the other sources. And then I think one thing everyone can do is expired and FISBO hunting. So there's probably in whatever market you're in, there's probably a couple of hundred expireds and FISBOs a week that you can call.
Right. Didn't you? I think you and I did that little experiment. Didn't I ask you to search in your MLS to tell me how many expireds there were in the last 6 months? And they're like 4,000 or something. And you guys are in one of the hottest markets in the country. It was
I
some huge.
forget. Yeah. The one stat I do remember is when I looked on New Year's Day in our market, and we had I got on the dialer that day and called, and so did a lot of our team members on New Year's Day, but because that's the biggest expired day of the year, and I think just on that day alone in our market there was like 1,000 just that just expired on December 31st.
I know it's so shocking. And that's just expired. And you add to it all the other sources of listings that are out there, and people worry about lack of inventory. Anyway, I mean, Julie and I talk about that on our podcast constantly. I don't want to beat them over the head anymore. I mean, guys, listen to past podcasts, and Julie and I give you dozens of ways to find inventory that's, guess what, not in the MLS. So yeah, listen to those past shows, or obviously look into becoming a Premier Coaching member. All right, so let's talk about some other things. Lead follow-up. You and I have talked about this a lot. A lot of people are addicted to the concept that you can drip on people and then eventually those people will result in a transaction. What's your mindset about that?
I definitely think you can, and I think it's okay to build up your CRM for longer term follow up. And if you're sending a weekly or every other weekly email to your database because of the leverage you get on that and the amount of people you can reach, that's worth your time. And it might be worth calling them, have a call schedule where you call them every like once every 3 to 6 months, depending on their price point and how hot they seem. But you really want to focus, I think, on top of funnel, and getting more leads in that you intensely follow up for the first like week or two. And then if you haven't got them in that first week or two, then you put them on that kind of low maintenance longer term follow up. But I think most agents would be better off improving their skill of filling the top of their funnel and just getting in front of more people.
That's the bottom line. Well, also pre-qualifying. What a lot of agents do is they'll generate the lead, especially if it's a bot lead. And you just talked about how crappy the quality of the bot leads are. And then they just toss them in a CRM and they expect that to become a lead. I remember this was maybe a year ago. Keri had 1,200 people in her CRM that you guys were dripping on. And then, you had the light bulb go off, but well, maybe we should call those folks. And then you had the team members start to call them. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, we started in the last year. We've implemented more calling measures, and we can monitor how many calls they're making through our database. And we have an ISA team as well, whose only job it is to book appointments. And but there's power in numbers when you have 60 plus agents on the team. If you can get them just booking one or two extra appointments a week, then they can outperform a professional ISA team that's smaller, that's 5 or 6, right? So that's probably added 70 to 100 plus appointments per week since we started getting good at it.
I want everyone to hear what he just said. So they have a massive database. And let's assume that their follow-up, knowing Keri and Dan, is state of the art. Let's just assume that this CRM is the baddest ass Navy SEAL Team 6 CRM drip campaign ever known to man. Assumption made, right? But the juice came from that. The real value came when they started making those calls. And I'm curious if you know this, and I'm sure you do. When you guys were calling these folks that were maybe tagged in your CRM as buyers, I'm sure that you were trying to pull out those that were sellers. How many listings that were tagged as buyers did you guys discover along the way? I mean, was that a boom to the listing side of the business too, making those calls?
Yeah, there's a lot of buyer leads, quote unquote buyer leads, that end up being seller leads if you do good follow up. So
Right.
we got a ton of listings from phishing buyer leads.
Listen to what Dan said. The number one thing, obviously, after you generate the lead is going to be to do a really good job pre-qualifying them. If you don't pre-qualify them, if you don't know what their motivation is, their time frame is, just all the questions you have in a script, use our script. It's free when you join premiercoaching.com. First 30 days, it's free, premiercoaching.com. But if you're not pre-qualifying them, like the way you win the game ultimately isn't by the number of leads that you have. And it's almost counterintuitive what I'm about to share with all of you, but if you listen to the podcast for a long time, you know what I'm about to say. The most successful agents that Julie and I have ever coached, Dan just said it, are the ones that with the fewest number of leads. Now, what's a lead? Let's just find what that is. A lead is someone who's fully pre-qualified, and essentially, if they're a seller, they have to sell. Or if they're a buyer, they've jumped through all the hoops to actually, buyer agency contract, exclusive buyer agency contract, pre-approved. They're not just someone that showed up in your life and says, I want to buy a house. They've actually validated that they're serious about it. Realistic expectations. You want to work with them. There's rules, right? But when you actually pre-qualify people and ask the tough questions, that's a lead. A lead in the most generalist of senses is not just somebody who just shows up in your life with a name and a phone number. That's just a big nothing burger. And then to dump that person in a CRM and feel some sense of security because you think, well, enough of those are going to equal enough deals, you're really missing the game. If you're generating the lead, fully pre-qualify them. And here's the interesting thing that happened. Well, I'll ask Dan. So Dan, if you and I were just texting about this actually. So for every lead follow-up, when it comes to recruiting or when it comes to selling real estate, what number of people, what's the ratio of people that come from long-term lead follow-up versus the ones that essentially decide to do business with you within 1 or 3 or fewer contacts?
Yeah, well, on the recruiting front, it's interesting. I've sponsored outside of our team and adding members to our team, I've sponsored 12 agents at EXP in the first 3.5 months for this year. And all but 2 of those I never talked to until this year. So of the 12, 2 were what you'd put in the 6 to 8 month bucket, right? We had talks last year and had some follow-up, and then the 10 of them were all new. Some of them, were new this week. So
So let's talk about that. So you went from, Keri's team still rocking and rolling. You and Keri decided to, let's first of all, why did you and Keri decide to leave being an independent, incredibly successful broker, one of the most successful in the history of real estate? Why did you guys decide to align with EXP and decide to, no longer be independent?
Well, I always kind of put it off because I couldn't wrap my head around. We've got X amount of agents. We'd have to pay a $4,000 cap on each of them. We're our own broker. So that's X number of dollars. So it doesn't make sense. And then one day you showed me your rev share, and I was like, okay, it makes sense. So, that's the really short answer, right? But during that same time period, we were also living in Florida. We started a brokerage down there. I saw how hard it was to expand to different markets. And, also when you run a team, no matter how good you are, there's going to be transition and churn. And some people are going to want to go part-time. Some people are going to want to go do their own team. And if you have a brokerage that's designed for a team, you really can't have competing agents at it. I've never really seen that model work, right? You typically have to pick a path where you're going to stay as a team and a teamerage, right? Where that's like 50 to 60, 70 agents maybe. Or you got to get really big and have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agents that you don't compete with. And this model just solved all of that because we could go to different markets. We could focus on what we like, which is training and recruiting and helping agents grow their own business, helping them build their own teams. And we could do that in any market without getting licensed. And, if agents were on our team, want to start their own team, like we have someone leaving our team now, and we're excited to help her launch her own team in the area because of the revenue share model. So the model, a lot of companies talk about culture, collaboration, training, but if you don't have it financially set up right to incentivize people to do all those things, it's just smoke and mirrors and talk. And Glenn Sanford designed a system that really incentivizes us to want to help other agents grow in our market, other markets everywhere. So the system just made a lot more sense than being on our own because we could expand more, help other people make more money, help ourselves make more money, and not worry about all the stupid crap that you have to do as a broker.
So you said a whole bunch of stuff, but the two most important, I think, number one would be, it's this Charlie Munger quote, this, show me the incentive and I'll show you the result. That's number one. And number two, and I remember this was the big breakthrough for Keri. Basically, one of the plagues you have, one of the problems you have if you have a team, if you have a broker, really any kind of talent-based business, is as soon as people become successful, they want to figure out that how am I going to ascend? Where am I going to go next? Am I going to, start my own brokerage, start my own team? And so your best people that you've poured the most amount of time and resources into become your competitors. And that's always the way it's been. And, so as a team leader, if you were not with, EXP, you have to kind of, in a way, you don't want really to educate them on, maybe you just want to be a kick-ass buyer's agent, but you're not going to teach them how to be a listing agent. You maybe don't want to show them everything, how to be successful. Maybe you just want to show them some of the things. And over time, they resent you for that because they know what you're doing and they leave anyway. So the reality of it is that the real estate team model, when you have good people, eventually they're going to want to have more opportunity. It's natural. And they're going to think that the more opportunities are going to come from them doing their own thing, which may or may not be true, frankly. I mean, a lot of people can make a lot more money being part of a team. I mean, Dan, some of your buyer agents are making hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. So I don't know. I mean, that's some math we could talk about as well. But here's what he said that I hope everyone's listening and paying attention to, internalizing. So let's say you're wanting to build a team. You have a team. You're a broker. Doesn't matter. You don't want those key people to leave. They're going to leave anyway. But now with EXP, when they leave, you're still partners with them. So when Bob leaves Keri and Dan's team and he goes off and does Bob's team, Bob is still part of their, assuming he stays with EXP, he's still part of their revenue share group. So literally, Keri and Dan are still given a financial incentive to make sure that Bob is successful no matter where he decides to go. And that's assuming, and by the way, that's relevant to any part of the country or the dozens of different countries other than the United States that EXP is involved in. That right there is the rule changer. And also, EXP doesn't want to dominate your brand. Like, if, believe it or not, there's still markets in the country where there's not a lot of EXP agents. Well, okay. And there's people like Keri Shull and Dan who have these really kick-ass, brands that they've built. Keri was independent, right? Keri Shull Team. Well, she didn't want to give that up. She spent millions and millions of dollars to try to build up that brand. Well, EXP, they don't want you to give it up. EXP it's not a franchise. They don't want to dominate your brand. They want you to be the brand. They're going to do everything to reinforce your personal continued success. And if you're really getting started in real estate and you're listening to us and you're thinking this is too highfalutin, well, I promise you, it's not going to be too far down the road where you're going to start thinking about doing your own team. And you're going to say, well, why should I, how does this make sense? I just told you. In addition to that, if you're a broker right now, Julie and I have had lots of conversations going on with brokers. And a lot of brokers right now, because of the nature of commissions, because of the nature of lead generation, the expectations of agents, all of these things have made most brokerages incredibly unprofitable to the point where a lot of them are making zero money. And the people that are running their brokers or the team leaders are, getting back into production themselves or have never been able to leave it. So they might have these big teams with lots of numbers and flash and all the rest of it, but they're not making much profit unless they sell real estate. Dan, any thoughts from my soapbox there?
Yeah, I think the big brokerages, the big teams, you're right. A lot of them are not profitable. And the really cool thing, if you're a big brokerage, likely with hundreds of agents, likely your brokerage is making you no money. Maybe it's even losing money, and you make it up through the ancillary services, right? Through title, through mortgage, maybe through insurance. And the really cool thing about EXP Realty is they let you keep all of that stuff. So if you're a big brokerage, you can essentially join EXP, you shed the unprofitable part. Now you make it profitable because those agents will grow faster in this system, with revenue share because of how that system works. But you still can keep the part that is generating you the lion's share of your profits, right? The title, mortgage, insurance, other parts. And the really cool thing I think about EXP Realty is out of all the major brokerages, it's the only one that is profitable with its core services. Every other brokerage, loses anywhere from like 30 million to 300 plus million last year, was the biggest one. Those brokerages don't have a path to profitability with their core services unless they raise fees, raise their caps, cut revenue share if they have a revenue share model, or they add ancillary services. And if they add ancillary services, well, what does that do to you if you're a brokerage or a team thinking about moving over? They're going to make it so that you can't, do your own ancillary services at their brokerage, right? So I think the cool thing about our platform is, you can move over here, shed the unprofitable parts, and grow your business, grow your ancillary services, and just have the most confidence out of anywhere that the system's not going to change on you.
Well, we're not speaking to everyone with what he just said, but for those of you who we are speaking to, which are going to be the brokers out there, you know exactly what we're talking about. What are the bullets of what he just said? Most brokerages aren't making any money. It's not anything to be ashamed of. It's the nature of what's going on in the economy and the industry. But you are making money from your ancillary, from mortgage, title, maybe some other things you've got going on. EXP wants you to keep those things. You can, and then move your brokerage over to EXP. Those agents that you're currently feed your ancillary service companies, they're still there. And by the way, you're going to add a lot more agents. I'm thinking of Chuck out in Arizona.
Yeah.
He's a great example. I mean, he had a brokerage of 800 agents. They moved over, and he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. One of my favorite people at EXP, and he actually is making vastly more money now than he was when he was an independent broker, and there's no comparison. So
he went from like 800 to 8,000, right?
Yeah, he has 8,000 agents in his group.
Yeah.
It was like 5 or 6 years, I think, or maybe 7. I don't remember, but still, I mean, those success stories are very common at EXP because of the fact that, so like you're thinking to yourself, some of you guys, the brokers, are thinking to yourself, well, okay, I see why it's better for me as a broker owner, but how is it better for my agents? It's better for your agents, and don't take this the wrong way, in every meaningful way, because all the reasons that you're attracted to EXP, or will be when you learn more, your agents are as well. I mean, healthcare, options to get stock, revenue share. The tech stack at EXP is always evolving and always getting better. What are the other highlights when you're talking to agents about joining EXP?
Well, if you were a big team owner, big brokerage owner, and you moved over, your team and your agents can still get whatever training, support, mentoring that you provide. But and then 15% of those agents will, maybe 20%, will plug into rev share, right? They'll go out and they'll build something that they don't have access to build now. But the system still benefits the other 80 to 85% that don't plug into it, because now not only do they get your coaching, training, and mentoring, but there's 6 other people in the revenue share line above you that financially benefit when those agents do well. So now, instead of learning from one person and their set of experience, they have that times 7. So I think the opportunity, the support, the training, the coaching I think, most agents are going to come over and sell more homes, collect stock awards, and maybe build revenue share.
Well, yeah, and Dan said it, so hopefully you guys are listening. The number one reason that agents join EXP is the fact that they like the community. They like the fact that it's the next natural step in their real estate careers. They like the support. I mean, it's really all comes down to community. I wrote this down because you've got a very concise answer for it. So our detractors, EXP's detractors, will make the claim that EXP is just a recruiting company. So when you hear that, what do you say?
Well, I say I wish there was more truth to that, because then my group would be a lot bigger. I always kind of make a joke because really, out of all the agents we've brought over, I think it's exactly what EXP's numbers are. Like 20% of sponsored agents, 10% of sponsored, more than a few. So I always focus on that, right? Like there's not a lot of people actually sponsoring. It's a great tool. It's available. But the reality is none of that would work, right? There would be no revenue share if there wasn't revenue. Like we have to sell homes for it to work. And EXP for the last 2 years in a row has sold more homes than any other brokerage. So we're selling a ton of homes. We've got some of the biggest teams. There's, I think, teams that have hit close to $1 billion in annual sales. So it's really just a place where agents that want to sell homes and run big teams are starting to flock to.
It's like all the hype, it seems, is about AI, and all the AI is going to revolutionize things, change the economy, and all the rest of it. Well, we're in essence we're what AI is to the future. We're that for real estate. That's how it always has felt to me. And you got to ask yourself why. Well, is EXP's tech stack really that much different than other brokers? It's not. Is it EXP has opportunity for health insurance? It's international. There's luxury division. There's all these things, right? Constant support from the broker team. Easy access to get your questions answered anytime. If you're a new agent, there's a great mentor program. Obviously, a lot of great teams. I think teams and brokerages are really, they're the biggest number of people that are joining EXP right now are people that are coming from that type of success. Yeah, but ultimately, if you are willing to open your mind to it, and all of you should, you really got to look at revenue share, because revenue share really can bend the time-space continuum for everybody that's listening or watching us right now. We can talk about revenue share now if you'd like to, Dan, but let me just put it this way. I'll set you up, okay? So sure. If $10,000 comes into the company at DXP, please listen to what I'm saying so you're really clear about this. When $10,000 comes in, $5,000 in essence is going to go to running the company. That's paying for broker operations. That's paying for all the things that take to run a realty company, right? Remember, EXP's in the United States, 24 different countries. This is a huge company. I believe the fastest growing real estate brokerage in the history of real estate brokerages, right? So 5,000 is going in EXP is publicly traded, so it's paying dividends, the whole thing, 5,000. The other 5,000 goes to revenue share. People say, well, how can EXP revenue share be sustainable? How blah, 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 blah. I just told you, it's split 50-50. So the 50 that goes over to revenue share, that is paid to the agents that have actually done the work of helping to build EXP, help to bring agents to EXP. Any business, brokerage, or doesn't matter, number one job is obviously creating leads and creating sales. That's what Glenn did with the revenue share model. And that's frankly one of the reasons it's grown so fast and will continue to grow so fast, because other brokerages offer profit share, revenue share. But if you actually compare the math to what EXP offers, it's so superior. I'm just going to say it. That's the reason you see some of these top producers like Keri and Dan coming over, because the opportunity to build passive income from revenue share is unparalleled. It just is. Dan?
Yeah, EXP gave 230 million last year back to the agents. I think 30 some odd of that was in stock awards. The other approximately 200 million was in revenue share. So if you do the math on that over 4 years, that's like a quarter billion, or no, that's quarter times four, right? That's $1 billion that's going to go back to the agents, in the next 4 years. And everyone has an opportunity to get that. And it is by far the largest amount that is going back to agents out of anyone out there. I think Keller Williams put up in their family reunion meeting that they gave out like 99 million in profit share, and they've been around for 30 years or more compared to how long EXP's been around, and they have twice as many agents. So like we're giving back 2.5 times more to half the amount of agents in half the time. And if you just think about it that way, it's mind-blowing. Yet it's the only profitable real estate company. And I don't know how Glenn figured it out or what he did, but the balance of what they charge the agent, what they make back, potentially in rev share, it seems like he just struck the perfect balance in my mind.
He did. And EXPI is this ticker symbol, and you guys can research more about EXP on NASDAQ. So it's publicly traded. All the financials are there. You can do your own homework. So Dan, you and Keri are attracting absolutely monster teams, monster brokers. I believe that you guys are going to have some of the largest, at least one of the largest broker moves in the history of real estate. They look like they're ready to land the plane and join with you guys at EXP. So, knock on wood that let me find some wood. Knock on wood that.
Yeah, I'm going to find some wood too.
All right, good. Knock on wood that actually happens. We're not going to give any other detail other than that. But this is a thousands agent broker, and they're moving over they want to move over to EXP. Why? Why would a big successful broker, was there any reasons other than the ones we've already discussed?
I think it's really what we've discussed. It's going to save costs, get rid of liability, provide a better growth trajectory, provide more opportunity to the agents, and then you still get to keep the profitable parts, ancillary services.
When a broker, you and I have had these experiences when we're on sponsoring calls. When a broker understands the value proposition to agents, it is almost, you can see it in their faces when they're thinking, how the hell am I going to compete against this? Like, I didn't understand. This is what you can kind of read. Sometimes you're doing Zooms. They're going to go from like, like a lot of this, like, oh, I'm not really interested. And then all of a sudden we're presenting it to them, and they're understanding that if this were presented even to their best agents, that they're going to lose all their best agents. That's when a lot of the brokers have the epiphany. That was 24 months ago. Now, all the changes in the industry, all the changes with commission, all the changes with cost structures, all the buyer agent lawsuits, all this stuff is causing just an absolute tsunami of brokers that are wanting to move over to EXP. Why? It's because the money makes more sense, frankly. It's a better opportunity for their agents. It makes more sense. A lot of their agents are going to go to EXP anyway. But also, frankly, a lot of them just they're tired of they don't want to have to be in the fight anymore. And, all those are great reasons. So whether you're a small, medium, large size broker, or whether you're a team, I really strongly encourage you to start having a conversation with Dan and the three of us, and Keri and Leo and whoever else. Leo's the CEO of Keller Williams. Keller Williams, listen to me.
He was the youngest person to be number one at Keller Williams, though.
Actually, you know what? I literally have Leo on my schedule, and I interviewed Leo in 2014 when he was the number one agent at Keller Williams for number of units sold. And so, yeah, that's where my mind is. I'm already thinking about the next interview. Sorry, you caught me. In any event, we'll get on a Zoom, we'll show you the math, and just look at the spreadsheets. Just look at how the numbers actually work. And if you once you understand the math, it's pretty damn simple. There's really going to be no rational reason for you not to move forward. Look, some brokers and whatnot, it's easy to move forward. You can move forward in the next 90 days. We'll make the math work. Others, there's going to be multiple offices and a lot of moving parts, and maybe there's some partners and all the rest of it. We can make that work too. But let's have that conversation. It's absolutely critical, because really, you got into the real estate business probably because you love selling houses, probably because you love agents, but also to make money. And the making money part's what's become really, really hard until you actually look at the math with eXp Realty, and then your mind's going to be blown. And I love being part of those conversations, because when you are talking to people, like I'm 54, when you're talking to people that have been in the business for longer than me, and you see their faces, the facial muscles ease, and they're, and when they're realizing like, holy crap, I actually can retire, or maybe I can get back to thinking big, brokers and teams and all the rest of it. Maybe my best days aren't behind me. Or if you're younger and you're thinking forward, maybe I can actually expand what I was hoping to accomplish in the next 5 years because of my alignment with EXP. I mean, that's how you and Keri thought. You guys saw it that way. You saw it as a way for you to actually do more because of EXP than what you're able to do as an independent.
Yeah, it definitely gives you the ability to do more. It also gives you the ability strategy, because you can't really sell a brokerage for a massive multiple anymore. Those days are probably gone. So this would allow someone to exit the business and still get paid through revenue share, still have it grow, and you can will it to your kids or whoever, right? So it's a real asset, a real exit strategy. And even if you're an agent who's 30 years old and you're like, well, why do I need to worry about an exit strategy now? Like, why not go make a couple $100,000 a year selling homes, but along the way, recruit 5-10 agents a year. Now, 3-4 years down the road, you're making $20,000 a month. Selling a home is optional. You can take off for the summer if you wanted, or take care of a sick parent if that happens to you. And so it's not just like exiting, like setting off, sailing to retirement. It's becoming financially free, where the work is just an option at that point, and you really do it because you love it, not because you have to.
But Dan, the best opportunities at EXP are gone. It's too late. I want to get on the ground floor of ABC XYZ broker, because all the, blah, 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 blah. I know what I think, but when you hear that, because we do occasionally hear that, where's your mind go?
Yeah, well, I know that there's a lot of copycats that kind of make that argument, like we'll be the next EXP, and you get in early, and I think that's a borderline unethical argument to make, because how could you in good faith recruit someone this year by saying that, and then how are you going to train that person to recruit in a year or 2 or 3 down the road, right? Because wouldn't it be too late for like if that company was 3 years younger than EXP? So I think there's an ethical problem with that, as well as it not being true. Like,
It's
we're
not.
at about 100,000 agents, that are at cloud brokerages that are in the EXP model. 85% of them or more are at EXP. Well, there's 1.5 million realtors. There's another probably 500,000 or more licensed but not realtors. So in the US, there's a few million. In the world, we're in 24 different countries, which most of our competitors aren't in any other countries, or maybe they're in one. We're in 24, so that's millions more. So there's plenty of upside, right? Plenty of room to grow. We're still very, very early. Like if you look at like the whole Netflix versus Blockbuster scenario, it's just real estate, brokerage industry is a little slower to adapt. So it's like that. It's just taking longer to play out. And there's an advantage in going somewhere that's already gone through the growing pains of 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 20,000, 20,000 to 80,000. Like we've already had to, make hard decisions and kind of be grown-ups with financial decisions. So you can rest in confidence that the infrastructure we've built at EXP, the financial model is going to be relatively safe compared to your other options out there.
Well, I mean, really, the bottom line is numerically, mathematically, Dan just told you guys some math, right? So 90,000 agents at EXP and growing every single month. What Dan was saying, 2 million, but I've heard as many as, 1.56 million members of NAR and another million members, a million licensees that aren't members of NAR. And then you're dealing with 24 different countries. And we only have 90,000 agents. So to think that the best opportunities are to join EXP are behind you, it's just crazy. That's just propaganda that the competitors try to put out there. And the other thing you said, which I hopefully really resonated with you guys, and like if so, especially those of you who are successful, you have maybe forgotten or don't you take for granted how painful it was for you to learn how to be as successful as you are now. Well, why would you want to join with a broker that hasn't even experienced those pain points or don't even see them coming? Like they can copy what they can copy what they perceive to be the unique selling propositions of EXP, cloud-based, tech stack, blah, 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 blah. But they cannot copy the people. They cannot copy the bumps and the bruises. They cannot copy what it takes to actually be 50 state licensed and deal with, tens of thousands of agents. Those types of things are skill sets that if you do not already have, you have to learn on the job. And learning on the job is extraordinarily expensive and time consuming. So if you want to build your future with somebody, don't build it with someone who's going to be on the ground floor. Why would you bother? Why not just go to the, penthouse, skip the freaking stairs to the top and enjoy the view? That's what EXP really should be for everybody. So, I mean, I have to say, Julie and I have we've been married for 33 years this year, and we've worked together for almost all those years. And of all the business decisions we have made, this is definitely one of the top three for sure, is aligning with EXP. Why did we originally do it? It's very simple, because it was a natural continuation of our coaching organization. I mean, the reason that Julie and I have been so successful with our podcast and other things that we've done isn't because we say so. It's because the coaching clients say so, because the podcast downloads say so, because the facts say so. Now, we always felt like there needs to be something beyond Julie and I coaching them and training them and all the rest of it. And, we wanted to do something on the brokerage side of things because we knew we could actually help them even at a higher level. But there was no model out there, and we didn't want to start one because we have coaching clients all over the United States. Well, EXP, that was the obvious answer. So now with EXP, we can coach them to train them to sell. Selling is the number one thing. And Dan and Keri have a coaching organization as well. We get you guys in production. We make it so that you're going to make more money. We make it so that you're going to make more net profit. And then we're going to introduce you to the other ways you can make profit. So then you'll have money from selling real estate. You'll have money from the stock, EXPI. You'll have money from the assets you buy from, your profit from your real estate business. Then you're going to have revenue share. Then you're going to have these other things. Maybe you're doing mortgage. Maybe you're doing title. You guys get it? So you're going to create multiple sources of income. And those multiple sources of income have a compounding effect that over time, it's going to produce so much profit that you then reinvest that profit into other things. And it's so maybe you're having these thoughts for the first time, as I was just saying what I did, or maybe you've had these thoughts all for your entire life, and you've not really landed in a place where you can really figure out actually how to climb that ladder. That's what this is for you. Either way, whether you're a new agent, whether you're a seasoned agent, whether you're a small broker, it does not matter. Whether you're a luxury agent selling the most expensive real estate in the most expensive parts of the world, EXP is something you need to take a hard look at. So Dan, honestly, you and Keri would make such brilliant sponsors, any individual agents, but also teams and brokers, because you guys have been there, done that. Keri had 60 agents or whatever on her team all move over at once. Nobody's ever done that before. And your group has grown in record pace. I think your group is one of the fastest growing groups at EXP. I mean, you're going to be over, thousands of agents within 24 months. I don't know if that's been done before. So if someone is serious about building real estate, their team, brokerage, or even individual agents becoming more successful, align with us. When you do so, you're going to align with Keri and Dan. We're a team. And we have, nearly 4,000 agents in our EXP revenue share group. When you're aligning with us, you're aligning with our revenue share group, but you're also aligning with all of EXP. Some people try to say there's silos at EXP. Well, there's Libertas, and then there's a legacy group, and then there's this, that. That's BS. Everybody shares all their information. Everybody's being helpful. Why? You got to remember, we all benefit when anybody sells a house because of the stock. When the broker becomes more profitable, more revenue, the shares go up in value, and all of us again are given an incentive. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the results. These are conversations you and I have every day on recruiting calls. But what are you thinking?
No, I can't agree with you more. I mean, I love how the platform allows us to be entrepreneurial. We can offer our coaching and our help to agents, but yet at the same time, because of and that's what the revenue share incentivizes, right? We each want to go out and build and help people that are in our group build. But then the stock, right? The stock system, right? That we all get stock awards. Like Keri just got her Icon stocks last month for hitting Icon in the first 2 months of the year, month and a half, whatever it was. The fact that everybody at EXP is earning stock, like there's 4 different ways to get it for free, that makes us want to help everyone at the company. So you have both, which is great. And I know there's the whole silo term out there that competitors are trying to use as like a psych ops against us, and
That's what it is.
it's just not true. Like, we were on a call yesterday with like or 2 days ago, I think, with 40 of the top people at EXP, all in different groups and lines, just collaborating. And there would be no way, like I bet on that phone call there was probably like 10-20 billion dollars of sales represented on that call, and there's just like no other group or way to get that kind of brain power and experience in the same room. So it was cool to see that collaboration.
Well, it was billions of dollars in real estate transactional volume, but also millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for sure, and revenue share. So again, I can't think of anyone that EXP is not the next natural fit for. I just can't. I can't think of any reason. Look, a new agent's going to say, well, I need somebody that's going to be, I need to have a local broker. Well, you do. It's called EXP. You're doing everything online anyway. And when you join EXP, you're going to have a mentor, a local mentor that's going to be assigned to you. You're going to have direct access to Julie and I, our coaches, Dan and Keri, their coaches. You're going to have immediate access to complete support structure. And, not to mention the fact that EXP is best of breed. Thus the reason it's growing so fast. Whether you're an agent that has been in the business for a while and you've got a good consistent business, you have one assistant, and you're saying, well, eventually I want to get off this treadmill. This is the next natural step for you. Let's have that conversation. And especially those of you who are teams and you're brokers, even if you're a massive broker, we're too big. We could never move over. We've had this brokerage in my family for 100 years. It would be all these thoughts. Let's have the conversation, and we're going to show you the reason why so many brokers are moving over. Here, I'll give you a little hint. Keep your broker name. You're still going to be, Tim and Julie Harris Real Estate. Still keep that. That's a superior brand brokered by EXP. We don't want you to lose your personal brand. You guys getting all of this? This is the reason that EXP is without a doubt the best. I say this all the time, but it's the 8th wonder of the world that's only available for folks that have real estate licenses. I mean, your revenue share is inheritable. Marketing and branding, all the things that you want to learn how to do, it's all waiting for you. And to join EXP, here's really the fun part. It's a $149 application fee. That's what it costs. There's not some big expense. There's no huge barriers to entry. So let's have the conversation. Dan, if they want to get a hold of you, how can they do so? And please, do they have permission to text you?
Yes, they can text me 703-638-4393. So 703. Yeah, 703-638-4393. You can also find my profile on Instagram and shoot me a message there, but text is really the best.
Yeah, Dan's all over Instagram. Also, they do a lot of events, not just in the Virginia area, but Florida. They're just in Tennessee. So if you want to go to any of their events, obviously find them. It's called HyperFastAgent.com, right?
Yep.
In the meantime, Dan, thank you very much for being part of our EXP family. Thank you for, you and I have become good friends over the past, almost 2 years. And it's so exciting to, frankly, be on this journey with you and your family as you guys create not just, passive income, but true financial abundance. It's exciting, and it's an honor to be your partner at EXP, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you. No, we've enjoyed it. It's been fun, and thank you for helping us change our lives.
Thank you. You guys have a great day. We'll talk with you on the show. More interviews coming. Remember to subscribe. HarrisRealEstateDaily.com. HarrisRealEstateDaily.com. Thanks, Dan.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.